Greetings, this is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I have drifted into the Underworld. The Star Wars Underworld. I have a bad feeling about this.
Here we go. We must go to the lower levels. The Underworld.
You've taken your first step into a larger world.
You're after something.
Ben.
Since I've started the Underworld, I've met so many great friends.
Chris.
I grew up in the 1990s, and mall packaging is nostalgic for me.
Dominic.
What I love most about Star Wars is that it's fun, and it's all-around good times.
So, this is where the fun begins.
May the Force be with us.
This thing really moves!
Whoa! I like this!
I can't believe you came all this way to see me.
Why am I not in the intro? I gotta come up with a snappy line.
Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome to a special bonus edition of the Star Wars Underworld podcast. My name is Dominic Jones, and coming up is my conversation with Carson Teva actor Paul Sun-Hyung Lee. We talked all about Paul's journey from being a fan cosplaying in the 501st and Rebel Legions to being an on-screen hero of the New Republic. He tells us all about his experiences on the sets of the Mandoverse shows, including what it was like working with giants like Anthony Daniels, Dave Filoni, and the late, great Carl Weathers. Huge thanks to Paul for sitting down with me for over an hour. It was a real thrill and a joy to record. Now, without further ado, please enjoy our conversation. And joining me now, you know him as Carson Teva on The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett, Ahsoka, and you've probably seen him recently as Uncle Iroh on Netflix and the remake of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And to many of us, he will always be Appa from Kim's Convenience. Welcome to the Star Wars Underworld, Paul Sun-Hyung Lee. Paul, thank you for being here.
Thanks. It's fun. It's great to finally be able to connect.
Yes. And when Paul says finally, he does mean finally. This has been something we've talked about for far too long, and I will take all the blame on that. You can chop my head off for this. It took way too long to make happen. But let me tell you, like, what kind of guy Paul Lee is, because Paul, you and I, we met for the first time at your Bad Bash party two years ago, or not last year, the year before.
Yeah.
And I remember going to that thing thinking like, okay, this is a party thrown by a TV star. He's going to be there. He's going to be behind a red velvet rope. You'll get your 2 seconds with him with a handshake and a selfie, and that'll be the whole thing. And we arrive at Stormcrow Manor, that's just this cool geek bar in Toronto where you throw the party. And not only are you not behind a red velvet rope, you're standing there right at the entrance in your X-Wing pilot costume, greeting everybody as they come in. And so imagine you're me going into this party, and there's a Star Wars character, like as close as you could literally have to a Star Wars character standing right in front of you. And we talked at that, and at that party, I casually slipped in, oh yeah, Star Wars podcast. And you were like, let's do it. Let's make it happen. And then through a variety of things that mainly, again, fall on me. We'll also throw a little bit on the strike, but mainly on me. It took us till now to make it happen, but I'm so glad that we're able to do this. Paul, what people need to know about you, I think, is every Star Wars actor that gets asked after they're cast in Star Wars, are you a Star Wars fan? And they all say yes, because everybody loves Star Wars. Who doesn't love Star Wars? But you, sir, are next level. And I think for people who are watching, they can see your backdrop. That's a Star Wars fan's backdrop if I've ever seen one. And you were, before you were even in Star Wars, a member of the 501st Legion and the Rebel Legion. What was it like for you to go from being a guy who dresses up loving Star Wars because he loves it, to then all of a sudden being on set, being, in your professional capacity there and being a part of it?
Yeah, no, it's mind-blowing, first of all, because, like you said, I've been a fan. Excuse me. I've been a fan since I was 5 years old, which is a long time ago, in a galaxy far away. And, it's one of those things you grow up with. You play with the toys. When I got back into cosplaying, I started with Ghostbusters. And once I did all the Ghostbusters cosplay, I actually started building cosplay, like armor for my kids for Halloween. So I, built this little mini stormtrooper costume and a short trooper costume. And I had so much fun doing that. And I thought, well, why am I making this for my kids when I should be making something for myself? And so by that point too, I had met a number of members of the 501st Canadian Legion at a Starlight Foundation dinner that I was invited to. And, I just really taken by the quality, the level of screen accuracy to their builds. And so I got chatting with a bunch of them and they were like, yeah, you should do this. And so, I really, dove into it head first, really enjoyed the process. But it's one of those things that as an actor, especially Canadian actor, and especially as an Asian Canadian actor, I didn't think I was ever going to be able to play in that universe because, I mean, let's be frank, up until a few years ago, there really wasn't that much representation in Star Wars. It was a fairly homogeneous universe with a couple of black characters thrown in there, to be sure, but not very many Asians. And, for this to sort of not really fall into my lap, although I describe it that way, I mean, there's a long journey. The road to being on Star Wars wasn't just suddenly, like overnight. It was a long road in the making, and that was part of it was becoming an actor, doing really good work, being in a show called Kim's Convenience that you mentioned, and having the right people see it at the right time, and then knowing certain people who knew how to get in touch with me. And so, I'm. It really, I feel, I feel like Cinderella a lot of times. You're toiling away. You're not getting a chance to do what you'd love to do. And then suddenly you get this opportunity from like a fairy godmother or fairy godfather, and you take the most of it. And so, being on Star Wars, my God, as a fan, as an actor, professionally, personally, is so fulfilling and so exciting. I mean, that was the one thing being on set. I had to like really, really try to calm down because I was amped. I was like super like bouncing around. And to his credit, Jon Favreau was really, really cool about it because he's a fan too. And I remember after my wardrobe fitting, I was supposed to shoot the next day, but they asked me to come to set to meet with JF. I didn't know who JF was, and I realized, oh, Jon Favreau. JF. That's what everybody called him. And so I was like, oh, okay. And he took me on this set visit. Like I went and I got to see Carl Weathers. He was going to be directing the episode I was in. I got to see him do some work. John took me around. I got to see all the different sets and the different droids that they were going to introduce in season 2 and all these things. And at the end of this tour, and I'm like dying, like I'm bebopping around and my eyes are darting like every which direction. I can't take pictures of anything, so I'm burning all the images into my brain. And he says, the reason why I showed you around is because I know you're a fan, and it's like we get this a lot. People get overwhelmed because you suddenly show up, you're in this universe that you love, and you're like distracted by a billion different things. So I just wanted to get that out of the way for you so that you could go in tomorrow and do good work. And I thought that was really, really awesome of him. So unnecessary, cool. But I thought it was really, really great. And there's that sense of responsibility of you don't want to be that guy that like messes it up and does a really shitty job on Star Wars, right? So there was that professional pride as well to just sort of keep it together and not go to, just be professional and do really good work. And hopefully they ask you back, and it did. So it's a combination of different things and emotions, and it was a roller coaster ride and a dream come true.
Yeah. So was this tour, was this before season 1 to come out? Because season 2 was filming right in that same time frame. Yeah.
So I actually got a set visit for season 1. I wasn't hired. Deborah Chow, she got like we met at the Unforgettable Gala. I hadn't seen her in like 25 years. And she said, Dave Filoni likes your work and wants to write something for you.
Okay.
And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. And then she said, what are you doing tomorrow? And I told her, I'm flying back. I'm flying back to Toronto. I got to go home because this was unexpected. I didn't think I was going to run into you. And she said, oh, that's too bad because, you should come for a set visit tomorrow. Can you change your flight? And I was like, I can't. I really want to, but I can't. And so I said, give me a couple of weeks. And if the offer still stands, I'd love to come back. She said, of course. So I went home, talked to my wife. She was like ecstatic for me. We planned, okay, in 2 weeks, we're going to, you're going to go back to Los Angeles. And I met enough people to that I was going to get a bunch of other different meetings in there as well to just sort of maximize my time in Los Angeles if I was going to go back. I mean, but really, it was just to see Star Wars, right?
Just to see Star Wars.
Yeah. And so I went and I visited, and it was incredible. You know, that just being able to go back. So I just got a season 1 set visit, and that, you know, that's when I saw Grogu for the first time. I got
you had to hold on to that for
for like a year. And you know, that was incredible. Seeing him, it's like, what is that? Oh my god, what is that? And Dave's going, shh, now don't tell anybody. So I'm not gonna ruin this for anybody, but this is gonna melt the internet. Like, and it did. But that was just season 1. Season 2, it was 6 months later that I got the phone call, and they said, hey, what do you like? Lucasfilm was asking for my availability. And and so I was there to work in season 2, but I did get a set visit for season 1, and I got this, you know, peek behind the curtain and spend like a good day on set, which was incredible. I got to watch Deborah work, and you know, and Dave, and met John again. Met John for the first time, and then, you know, got a guided tour by Dave Filoni of the costume shops and the writers, all this stuff. It was just incredible, you know, and then had dinner with Filoni himself. So
that sounds like literally the sort of dream trip.
Yeah.
You and then you say you get that call 6 months later. When Lucasfilm calls, is it like, yeah, I'll clear the schedule, or because you're a working actor, you have all these commitments to, the timeline in my head isn't quite straight, but I think Kim's probably would have still been on at that point.
Yeah, it was, but luckily, so the call came around October, and we'd finished shooting Kim's for the season. Generally we would shoot in the summertime, so I think around May, and it would take us to August or end of August. So we were in the clear. It was good for that. And but it was my agent calling. I remember she said, yeah, so Lucasfilm called and they want to know your availability. And I was like, I said, we'll clear, like, it is, you clear it. It's like, I will burn down forests, I will kidnap people's pets, I will do anything to sort of make sure that this works. So
it's amazing. Yeah. So you get the call, you go back, you're told you're going to play a character, and you go to your first costume fitting, and you being, you know, 501st Rebel Legion member, you get that X-Wing pilot costume for the first time. Are you putting it on going, oh, this is different from the stuff that we make, or this is just like the stuff that we make?
It's a little bit of both, because you know, I go in because I cosplay as a Rebel pilot. I actually have that cosplay. You've seen it.
Oh yeah.
But there's a difference between an off the rack jumpsuit that is mass produced for everybody, and you know, it's small, medium, large, extra large, and something that is scratch built by a wardrobe department and fitted, you know, tailored to you. And that's what the orange flight suit was tailored to my measurements. Like, it was made just for me, which is really, really cool. But then the other parts are, they outsource like the chest box, the helmets, all the other accoutrements of the pilot. They outsource them from the same places, same vendors, same makers that a lot of cosplayers do, because they are such fantastic quality. And so, like, the chest box was from a company called Far and Away Creations, and it was their Rogue One style. And you know, the helmets, same thing, from Far and Away Creations, which was based on a Novos design that was modified and whatnot. They had to make their own strapping for the ejection harnesses and stuff like that, which was cool. And I got to help out a little bit with that, because there was a bit of confusion as to what was going on. And because I had all these photos on my phone, these carefully curated photos of my own build, I was able to walk through the wardrobe department on the little tricks in the trade of the trade that I had learned from various other cosplayers whose build threads I had been scouring, right? And so it was this really wonderful coming full circle moment. So whereas, yes, there, you know, it was similar to my cosplay in so many other elements, just because they had the resources to scratch build stuff. It was so much better.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
They didn't let you keep that one, did they?
No, they don't let you keep anything. They reuse everything, which is incredible. And I think that's one of the most asked questions I get. Frequently asked questions is, do you get to keep your stuff? Did they let you keep it? It's like the answer is always no.
Of course, yeah.
A lot of movie sets, they won't let you keep any because if they put money into it, it belongs to production. And no, I didn't take anything either because I don't want to get caught and not be asked back because I was too stupid to exercise self-control. And so, yeah, that's the other question is too.
Yeah,
things have been gifted to me by the props department. Where
there you go.
You know, it's no longer needed, and they were gonna dispose of them. So I've got a deck of Sabak cards that was used in season 2, which is really great. Some credits, New Republic credits, and Imperial credits. And yeah, so those are the things that were gifted to me, which was awesome.
Yeah, that is amazing. And so you film your scenes for season 2. You get to be Carson Teva. First you're chasing down the Mandalorian, then you're having scenes with Carl Weathers.
Yeah.
Then you have to go back to real life. You
Yeah.
have to go back to your life in Toronto, back to working in Toronto, being an actor here. But you have all these Star Wars friends. You're in the 501st. You do a Star Wars podcast called Boba Squadron. You're regular on there. Obviously, you keep the secrets. But did you ever have a little bit of fun going, I know something you don't know?
You know, it's not as fun as you think. It's really hard because it's like you can't tell anybody that you know. And it's kind of like you can't really get too involved in any sort of conversation about a show that you're involved in because you can't tip off that you know this stuff, or you know, like you seem very like, and that's a thing. So that was, I mean, I almost had an aneurysm for that whole year that I had to sort of sit on all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which was hilarious because I remember season 1 when I started shooting season 2. Season 1 hadn't dropped yet, and so it was it was great watching all of season 1 and kind of going, oh, I knew this was going to happen, because you know everybody had known I'd gone on a set visit, but nobody knew I was going to be I was actually in season 2. And so that was really hard because it was like we had to wait that whole cycle, and it wasn't until I think May or June of 2020.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, because it was October.
It was October.
It was October. It was a full year.
Yeah.
Because we just finished filming just before the pandemic hit. So it was like, yeah, I finished in because I had to go back a bunch of times. And I finished, it was like February 2020.
Oh my God.
That I'd finished and they had just finished. And so it was like this whole like, okay. But yeah, sitting on that sucked. As it is that whole like I know, and I hear people arguing, and it's like I know the real answer, but I'm not going to say anything.
Because you had your season 1 set visit as a little bit of cover. So if you're talking about behind the scenes things, you're like, well, that's what they saw. That's what I saw in season 1. Of course, nothing about. I wouldn't happen to know anything about season 2.
Exactly right. It's all conjecture at this point, you know. So it was hard. I mean, when you have a secret like that. I mean, that's why people blab, because secrets are fun to spill. Yeah. Right. But in this case too, it's like you sign an NDA, right? Like there could be a big ramifications if you squeal.
There's legal ones, professional ones. Nobody wants to work with the guy who goes and spills the beans on everything. Yeah. So you gotta be play it safe, be careful with all.
And I also don't want to spoil it for anybody.
You know as a fan what it's like to not want to be spoiled. Funnily enough, one of the only things that I was spoiled on for season 2 of The Mandalorian was that you were showing up, and it wasn't because of a leak or anything. It was just because I couldn't watch the episode early enough that day. All the other ones, because it was COVID times, everything was locked down. Could stay up all night and watch these things. That one, for whatever reason, I couldn't watch it. And the only thing I saw about that episode, because it's the wacky, amazing ice spiders episode that you first show up in. The only thing I saw about it was I went on Instagram and I saw that Dave Filoni's wife had posted a picture of you in your costume. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, this is amazing. There's something really good to look forward to in this. It's pretty fantastic. Now you mentioned when you're filming season 2, you were in some scenes with Carl Weathers, and he directed your episode. Obviously, we sadly lost Carl just fairly recently.
Yeah.
What was it like to, share the screen with him, to work with him? Do you have any special memories of working with a legend like that?
So many. Carl was larger than life. and continues to be so, and somebody that I adored very, very much. He was the first director I got to work with in the United States, right? Like, what a great feather in my cap for that. The beginning. So I have the story about Carl the first time I met him, and I was actually he's scary. He can be really scary. He's a big guy. He's an icon. He's very intense. And, if you don't know him, he can be pretty intimidating. And I remember it was my first day shooting, and I was in costume, and he was directing the episode, and I had a scene with him and all this stuff. And I was out, and we were having lunch. It was lunch break for the crew. And everybody was, sort of in line, and there's this big tent, and there's these different eating areas, but you can get all your food, which is freshly made for you. And, so there's a lineup to get the food, and I got my food, and there was Carl sitting all by himself at a table. And I thought, you know what? I was stupid. I was like, you know what? I'm an actor. He's an actor. He's directing me. We're going to be in the scene together. He doesn't know who I am. I'm going to go up. I'm going to introduce myself to him. I'm going to have lunch with Carl Weathers. Yeah. And I went over to there, and, stupid Canadian actor. And I said, excuse me, do you mind if I join you? And he's eating, and he stops, and he looks up, and he gives me this look. And in my mind, I'm like, oh God, I've made a horrible mistake. No. Like, what the hell were you thinking? And he's just like, his gaze is piercing. And he looks at me and considers me for a moment, but it felt like, an hour. And he kicks the chair out from where I'm standing from the other side. So he kicks the chair out for me to sit in. Like he kicks out and went, oh my God, that's amazing. That's so baller. I'm going to sit down. And just as I go to sit down, I'm just starting my downward trajectory. He says, just as long as you don't expect a conversation. And there is that micro millisecond where I pause. It's almost imperceptible. It's like, hey, I'm committed. And I sit down. I'm like, shit. And I made up my mind. I said, you know what? I'm not going to look at him. I'm just going to eat my food, chew with my mouth closed, and I'm going to get the hell out of Dodge. So I'm there, and I'm trying to eat, and he's looking at me, and he's like studying me, and I felt like a bug under a glass. And he's like eating, and he's looking at me. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? How do I get out of here? And he says, where are you from? And I'm like, I'm from Canada. I'm Toronto, I'm from Canada. I'm from Canada. He said, no, where are your people from? And I said, oh, my parents are from South Korea, so they're Korean. He says, because you look like a friend of mine, right? I said, oh, okay, cool. So, do you know Pat Morita? I said, yes, I do. Yes, I do. And for those of you who don't know, he played Mr. Miyagi in The Karate Kid, the original Karate Kid. And he also played Arnold in Happy Days. It's a really old show. And so I'm like, oh, okay. It's like, you eyes, they're very kind. It said, oh, well, thank you. Thank you. And so I'm like, okay, this is really, I really made a big mistake. I shouldn't be here. I'm just trying to eat my food. And then he says, so whose friend are you? And that's when that's when the penny drops for me. Because it's like, oh, I get it. So he's the director of the episode. Yeah. He didn't hire me. He didn't cast me. It was Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. They cast me. And usually it's the director of the episode who does, for the smaller characters, they will go through and they will have a say on who they want cast. And suddenly this pudgy Korean Canadian kid is just sort of dropped in on him, right? So he's thinking, okay, so whose back did I scratch? Like who he doesn't know I'm an actor. He doesn't know I am an award-winning actor from Canada. He doesn't know any of that. Yeah. He just sees this guy. And
you don't carry your Canadian Screen Award around with you every day.
No. And even if I did, it wouldn't mean much in the States. And so I'm like, oh, I get it. And I'm like, oh, I'm Dave's friend, Dave, I guess. Yeah. Dave. I mean, we're not really friends, right? Like it's like, I know Dave. I've met him. We've hung out. At that point, we weren't really friends. Like we were friendly, but so it's like, oh, okay. And he's like, And I thought, oh, that's why he doesn't know if I can act. He doesn't know anything about me. And so that was the first time I met Carl. And then for me, it was like, okay, well, I got to prove that I belong here. I gotta show that I'm not just some rube who was able to back scratch his way onto a set as a favor or has naked pictures of people. And that's how I got on, right? It's just like, it's one of those things. And it was really cool because over the course of the shoot, it was only 2 days. And the first day was that was a tough day. First day was a tough day because, people were like, who the is this guy?
Right.
First of all, for me, there were a couple of people who knew my work and they were Canadians, which was hilarious. But it was going in and just doing the scene. It was a scene with Gina Carano. And it was just like, I prepped my work for it. I knew what I wanted to do, the choice that I made. We did the scene. Carl calls cut, comes over, gives me a redirect. He says, so what do you want in the scene? It's like, oh, I want that. He says, no, you only want one thing. You want her to join you. So I want you to keep your eyes on her. Don't take your eyes off her for a minute. Study her, look at her, blah, blah, blah. It's all about winning her over. And okay, I can do that. Carl walks away. Jon Favreau walks in, and John is the showrunner. And so he's overseeing everything. And, I think he's paying extra attention because it's Carl. It's his first episode. They want to make sure everything's running smoothly. It's a genre piece. And then John comes over and says, yeah, so I think the whole scene is about subtext. And so, just throw every line away and don't look at her. Don't even look at her. I'm like, oh, what the hell am I supposed to do? And so I can't throw Carl under the bus. I can't throw John under the bus. I got to serve two masters, so to speak. And I tell you, whenever you try to do something like that, it never works. It's awful because you have this non-committal, wishy-washy back and forth performance, and they're freaking out because I'm trying to do that, and they don't know I'm trying to do for both of them. And I'm getting note, and it's like then I get to talk and I've seen this talk done. I've had it early on in my career where they come and try to calm you down because they think maybe we made a big mistake. And John goes, don't worry about it. Like we're going to keep shooting until we find what works for us. So you don't have to worry about it. I'm like, God damn it. I am better than this. And so finally at the end, I think they just they had enough variation and they had enough that I guess they wanted to, if they wanted the Frankensteins a take together, they could do that. And they finally said, just a free take, do what you want. I went, good. And I went back to the original choices that I had made that I wanted.
Nice.
And they went cut, and that was perfect. That's exactly what we were looking for. See, you just needed to warm up a little bit. And I thought, Jesus, this was very, very hard. But we got it. And then, so the next day it was Carl, again, but he was way more relaxed. He'd seen that I could take direction. We're almost finishing the episode, so he's a little bit more relaxed, and we really got a chance to chat in between, and he was quite a gentleman, a gentleman too. And he said, so like, what else have you been in? Like, what would I have seen you in? I said, oh, this is a little show called Kim's Convenience. He says, yeah, okay, I'll watch that. Nice. And I'm thinking, yeah, you're not going to watch that, but thank you. And then season 3, we're shooting season 3, and we're in the back lot, and this is like a year later, and I hear Paul, and it's Carl, and he's running at me. I'm like, oh my God. he's running at me. And he goes, I saw Kim's Convenience. I loved it. Yeah. Why are we not working together more? And I thought, oh my God, that's amazing. Yes. And so that really sort of cemented our friendship. And, for the premiere, we hung out, and then he said, he's like, Paul, you got a phone? Give me your phone. He says, now you have my phone number. Text me. We'll get together for a drink. So he came over to the hotel a few days later. We had drinks and talked about the industry and business. And then we did cons together. So the last time I saw him was at the Winnipeg Comic-Con. And it was him, Emily Swallow, my wife Anna, and I, and we had a really, really lovely dinner together at the Fort Garry place. And that's the last time I saw Carl. And it was just, no, that's a lie. I saw him the next morning. I bought him breakfast because he bought us all dinner.
There you go.
Right. So it was that. But Carl, he was one of my heroes. Just growing up, I saw him, remember him in Rocky. Yeah. Right. And then there was Predator. He was Dylan in Predator, but he could also do the comedy. Yeah. Obviously, right. Chubbs in Happy Gilmore, but Action Jackson. and all these great movies that he was in. The guy was an icon, a Hollywood action icon. And so I feel very lucky to have not only met him and worked with him, been directed by him, but to have gotten to know him. And he loved his family tremendously and was so proud of his grandkids and his kids. He was an amazing man.
Yeah, that's those are some incredible stories, and they go fit right in with all the incredible stories we've heard about Carl before and since his passing, and just what a tremendous human. How lucky we are that he got to be in. He shared himself with us through his performances, that he got to be in Star Wars, and we got to enjoy him that way. And I remember seeing him at Celebration, just like loving being the Star Wars guy, loving being the guy, and just making everybody laugh and making everybody have a good time. What a legend. What an absolute legend. So you film your stuff for season 2. Those episodes come out. The world sees. There's Paul now as Carson Teva, the X-Wing pilot, who hangs out with Dave Filoni, the X-Wing pilot, Trapper Wolf. What was it like to do scenes not just with Dave as like a performer, or not just Dave as a producer, as a writer, as a director, but also have to be with him, share the scene with him as a performer with his cowboy hat and his look, that look he gives Mando.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Dave is an incredible storyteller. And as much as he grumps about, I don't like being in costume or being in front of camera, he loves it. Like, I know, because he's good at it, right? Like, he's good. There's a joy in the storytelling when he's there. And like, when the cameras aren't rolling, everybody's hanging off of every word that comes out of his mouth, because he has, so many great stories about working with George Lucas, so the process of storytelling and all the different things that he does. And he's a nerd's nerd as well, right? So he can talk about anything from like, the Showa era of Godzilla to like NHL hockey. Like, he's a huge Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and so like he follows sports as well. What I love about Dave is he is so grounded, and he is absolutely wonderful in terms of making you feel at ease. He's not one of these guys that thinks he's better than you. He's a very kind, thoughtful, funny human being. And so, he always says, when we were supposed to be shooting other scenes together, he's like, I can't make it. I was like, I was really looking forward to just playing with you again. Yeah. He really makes you feel like, we're friends. We're really good friends. And we are, which is really weird to say. It's cool though, right? Like, I can now say, Dave Filoni is my friend. He'll text me about hockey all the time.
Oh, nice.
Right? Which I love it. And like, my big rule with Dave is like, I never text him about Star Wars unless it is to say, congratulations on this or that. But I never ask him questions. I never bug him about that.
You're not looking for Bad Batch spoilers.
No, not at all. And and he's so thoughtful. Like, he'll text me. He texted me because he directed he was a director on season 1 of the animated version of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Right? Like, that's kind of where he got noticed. And that's when I think after it was his work on that George Lucas and Lucasfilm, they approached him to do the Clone Wars, right? And so it's one of those things. So he knows Brian DiMartino, like Brian and Michael from Avatar, and he's got an intimate knowledge of that world. So like, he texted me before it dropped on Netflix saying, hey, it looks great. Congratulations. Like, he's very thoughtful that way and very kind. So
what a guy. Yeah. I remember at this most recent Bad Bash that you threw, my friend Kareem came to that party. He had just thrown together his Ezra Bridger from Ahsoka cosplay. And like, he built it like that, like I think the Ezra had just shown up like a week before. So he had put that thing together real fast. And he showed up and you saw him. You went, oh my God, we got to send this to Filoni right now.
And I remember that. And Dave texted back. He's like, wow, that was a fast turnaround. And went, yeah. It's like,
I remember I was with Kareem earlier in the day, and he was putting together the pauldron out of like he'd cut it out of a detergent dispenser,
like a jug.
Like a jug. Yeah. He basically cut that out of that and was tying it on and putting the pieces on to make it look right. It's incredible.
Nice.
So you've done season 2, the world sees it. It's incredible. Then the pandemic hits, and so everything gets thrown out of whack. But you go back for Book of Boba for a very fun little cameo in there.
Yeah.
And then of course season 3 of Mando. What was it like to then go back after, obviously so much time had passed between season 2 and 3 even beginning to film, but also the world had gone through this sort of incredible trauma together of COVID and everything that came with that. What was it like to then go back to Star Wars? And was there sort of a feeling of like, we've been through something, let's get this right, let's make sure everybody we have something special for everybody because they've been through so much?
I think it always is the idea of this is going to be something special for people regardless of the situations. But I think in terms of the pandemic, it was more of a we have gone through something absolutely terrifying and horrible, and we are coming through the other side. So let's celebrate the fact that we are back, that we are working again. That yes, there are all these restrictions, but the world did not end, and we have gone through it. And so there was a sense of that. I mean, at least for me, that's what it was. It was like. And I remember too, it's like, oh my God, I'd like that they asked me back, and I was like thrilled. And they were like, it's one episode. And I went, that's fine. Like, holy crap. Like that's way more than I expected. And so happy. And then to find out that it's actually the Book of Boba Fett instead of season 3 Mandalorian was like another, oh my God. So you mean that means I'm in 2 Star Wars shows. But it was like, going to Los Angeles, and there was still a lot of COVID restrictions, masking mandates in place. I had to fly, you had to take COVID tests before you got on the plane. You're scanning your health documents. You have to stay masked the entire time unless you were eating. Landing in Los Angeles, I had to isolate for 10 days.
Oh, wow.
Right. And so like, it was very, very strict, and especially coming from outside the country. And it was like this thing about, I remember going out there, I was scrambling to try to get vaccinated before I went down to the States, but the waiting lists were too long. There wasn't enough vaccine up here. I wasn't old enough. I wasn't sick enough. I wasn't fat enough to sort of get the shot type thing. And so I went down, and while I was isolating, somebody said, why don't you just get your vaccine down here? I said, am I allowed to? And in Orange County, they're like, they don't care where you're from. They just want to get a vaccine in your arm, and they have a lot.
Good,
so like, I was like, what? So I remember during my quarantine, like I booked an appointment at like a Walgreens, and I went in and they gave I thought for sure that they're going, you're Canadian. And I was going to get like put in handcuffs or trying to get a vaccine. And they're like, no, they just put me in, and they're great. They didn't care. I got the CDC card to say it. And like, I almost cried after I got it, because it was just such a sense of relief. And it was just like, oh my God, this is in America where you have to pay for healthcare. The shot was free. And so like, they're really, really trying to get that sort of like, get the vaccine out there. Let's try to get through this as fast as possible. So I really appreciated that. So like, in the midst of all that, the world being under such pressure and such fear, to go back to work was an absolute joy. And to do all that. And so that's what it was, because we were working towards going back to normal. And even now, we're still not quite there. It's getting there, but we're still not quite there. But we've gone a long way since then, which is great. And it's I call that whole period the blip. Because those are lost years. Those are lost years. You know. So going back and doing Mando season 3 and Book of Boba Fett. Was that was just such a treat that and then we also shot like Avatar at the same time, right? And so to be able to do both, and I thought, I'm living the jet setting A-list actor dream, because I'm working on Star Wars and Avatar, and then being flown back and forth between Los Angeles and Vancouver by production.
Amazing.
Like, I thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible. So
Yeah, I can only imagine what it must have been like to be like, okay, thank goodness we're back. We're starting to see light on the other side. Now I get to go sit in an X-wing cockpit and do some scenes with the Mandalorian. Like I just think about, like, for me, just going back to Blue Jays games and being like, oh my God, there is light, there is hope. We can start to do little things here and there that felt normal.
Yeah.
And so you do Book of Boba, you go back for season 3. Season 3, Carson Teva is in a lot more of the show. He's gone
Yeah.
from a couple of scenes to set in a couple of episodes to some episodes where you're very prominent in there, including you go to Coruscant, you get out of the X-wing, jumpsuit, and you get this cool jacket. Now, I've heard that you had a small hand in helping make the jacket look the way it does. So I'm gonna throw it up on the screen. Can you tell us a little bit about the part you played in getting Carson's jacket to where it was?
For sure. Those 2 patches, I got a chance to design. And so those are my designs, working very closely with Shauna Tripsick, God rest her soul. She also passed away tragically about a while ago. Shauna was just, oh my God, she was a nerd's nerd. Like, she really cared, and it shows in the intricacies of the costume and the homage it pays. Like that little gray vest that you have underneath, that I'm wearing underneath, and the brown shirt. Those are directly inspired from Return of the uniforms that the Rebel Alliance wore during Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And she actually went so far as to like do the thread counts on it, know how many stitches,
wow,
all these things that she tried to recreate just so it felt like it belonged. And that was Shauna through and through. But I got a message from her while I was funnily enough, having to isolate again, quarantine. She said, so Dave wanted all the pilots to sort of design their own patches, so they felt a lot more personalized. And she said, do you want to do that? And I thought, yeah, I'm sitting in my hotel room for the last 3 days going crazy. It's like, sure. And so I threw together a couple of designs, and the top one is a Rancor head. And it's a silhouette of a Rancor head, and it did not start off that way. Initially, it was a bulldog. It was this big bulldog, and there were starfighters all around it, and it was like really super busy. And I got a note back saying it's too busy. It doesn't look like Star Wars. This looks like a U.S. Air Force patch. I went, fair enough. Yep, fair enough. And so I was, I was encouraged to sort of simplify it, and I was given a note that Dave says there are no bulldogs in space. So okay. And I picked the bulldog because this is an animal that has been a mascot in my life at different points. So I went to Winston Churchill High School in Calgary, Alberta, and our mascot was a bulldog. I live in East York now, and the mascot for East York is a bulldog. My youngest played for the East York Bulldogs. It just seemed to be there, and I thought, okay, this is a fun way to pay homage to this thing. But there are no bulldogs in space. And Shauna actually said, well, what about a Rancor? I thought, okay, that's a cool idea.
Yeah.
So I had this other design idea for it was like the silhouette of a whole Rancor, right? Like with his claws up and his tail sticking out. And then I got a note back from Shauna saying the tail looks like a penis. Like, oh, right. Like in a silhouette form, the tail looks like a big dong. I'm like, okay, well, we can't do that. So then I changed it to like the Rancor claw. It was just like the claw. And like, no, it was just, so I changed it to the silhouette of the head, and they, they really love that. And so it's like, okay, so we're stuck with that. And then the patch underneath that is actually 2 birds or bird-like creatures. And I know birds play a very significant, they're a significant symbol in Star Warsology, especially in the Filoni verse, with the conveys and the all the different birds, Phoenix Squadron, everything. And so I knew they would like that. And it's actually an homage to the Korean flag, where I saw an image where it was usually it's a yin yang symbol with a blue swish on the top and the red on the bottom, and they've got these markings on each corner. And so I saw there was paint smears, and I thought, oh, those look kind of like birds. So I sort of took inspiration from that, and I turned them into birds. So that kind of, and I flipped them. So that kind of looks like the Korean symbol, but they're bird-like. And then in Arabic above it are the letters E and Y for East York.
Amazing.
And so, that's how that got turned into those patches. So those are, that I think that's a really cool touchstone. And, every pilot also has a different cut leather jacket. And so mine is like sort of the more traditional leather jacket. I remember Rick Famuyiwa's, his leather jacket was a baseball style, like the baseball jacket cut.
Yeah.
So no collar. Deborah Chow's, hers had the big sheepskin fluffy, collars and stuff like that. Dave, I think he had a motorcycle style. So it was really cool. The different versions that all the pilots had.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a cool idea for Filoni and Shauna and everybody to have to get everybody involved, not just in their performance, but in really building their characters and what would they wear, what would they want on their uniforms, and to get to pay tribute to your heritage and where you grew up and these things, like the bull. Rancor's kind of a Star Warsy bulldog if you scaled it up massively.
Yeah,
it's
same kind of jowls and the face. So I thought that was really smart. Smart choice.
That'll work. Yeah. Now, Paul, were you I think I know the answer to this. Were you a Star Wars Rebels fan before you got into this? Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
So what was it like to then be looking at your script and see the name Zeb Aurelius walks into a scene?
His name wasn't in the script.
Of course
it was Lasat Pilot in the script.
Okay.
And it was like, oh, okay. Like, how many Lasat? I mean, they're an endangered species, right? Not very many of them left. And so like I had a sneaking suspicion that it was going to be Zeb, and it wasn't really confirmed because the day we were shooting, even it was it wasn't Stephen Bloom. It was like this huge guy. He had a great jumpsuit on with all the dots all over, like the balls on him and stuff. And did the scene with him. And it was like Dave was there because they had all the pilots were sort of populating the bar area, and Dave was there with Deb and Rick. And I was like, come on, that pilot, come on. He was like, well, we'll see. And so that was like, it's like, of course it was Zeb. I thought it was really, really cool, that whole bit. So it's, that I keep, it's hard for me to get my head around because I am a fan of all these shows, and now to be in the shows and rubbing shoulders with the characters that I love is tremendous. And so like Carson Teva, he has now hung out with Zeb Aurelius. Yeah. He served with Harrison Dula. He's hung out with Hera. And Chopper. Yeah. And C-3PO now. Right? It's just like, and Mon Mothma. And it's just like, holy crap. Like I can't get my head around it, right? It's just, it's so cool.
You're looking on screen going, oh yeah, this is a great bit of Rebels with live action. And there I am.
And there's Hu Yang as well. And I don't know, Ahsoka Tano. Like crap, man. What the hell? It's incredible.
It's just amazing. Well, and I mean, perhaps there's many iconic characters we just listed there, but like C-3PO. Yeah. To be on set that day. Yeah. And I'm gonna guess if they didn't put Zeb Aurelius in the script, I'm gonna guess they probably didn't put C-3PO in the script. They did. Oh, it's C-3PO we can put in the
And I remember, but here's the other surprise. So I mean that's Filoni. Yeah. We were there, and you see, it's C-3PO. I'm like, oh my god, it's C-3PO is gonna, like, the character. It's a character. Never thinking for a moment that Anthony Daniels was actually going to be there, because they have a number of fantastic droid performers. Chris Bartlett is the first guy that comes to mind. I'm friends with him. He plays almost all the protocol droids that you see, and in fact, he fabricates a lot of those droid costumes, right? Like, and so he's the guy. And I saw C-3PO, and Chris is always he's done C-3PO. He's played him at like the theme parks. He's played him in award ceremonies and stuff like that. And so I thought, okay, it's cool. I'll get to play with Chris, and then they'll dub over Anthony Daniels' voice. Yeah, right. Because they do it for Mandalorian. Yeah, it's no, I was going to say Bruce Wayne.
That'd be quite the get.
It's Bruce Wayne. No. So it's Brendan Wayne in the costume. Bruce Wayne, jeez. He is Bruce Wayne, though. He's that charming. Brendan Wayne in costume, and it's Pedro doing the voice, right? That's not a secret anymore. And so that's what I thought they were going to do. And Dave was like, "Oh, so did you see this script?" So yeah, it's pretty exciting. C-3PO. He's like, and Dave was like, just wait. And freaking Anthony Daniels shows up, and it's like, oh my, are you kidding me? And everybody on set's losing their friggin' minds. because it's Anthony freaking Daniels.
Yeah.
And he's getting into the costume. Like he's in the costume. And we're like, what the hell? And he's like 70, he's in his 70s, late 70s, I believe.
Yeah.
And he's in incredible shape. He's still in it.
Yes.
And we're doing a dress rehearsal. And Senator Ziono, who's beautifully played by Nelson Lee, plays him to perfection. Where like he's the guy you want to hate. He's
So good. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And he's just killing it. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like such a rube next to Nelson because he's just crushing the scene. And so we're doing the scene. And then, Anthony Daniels, he walks in and he's not in costume. He just he's walking in because we're doing blocking. And he's reciting the lines. And everybody on set, we're all just transfixed on him. And it was so quiet. You could hear a mouse fart. I'm just like, oh my God. And then there's this beat, this silence. And Anthony Daniels looks around and he looks at Nelson. He says, I believe it's your line. And the place just erupts in laughter because we were just so fixated on watching a legend perform a legendary character.
Yeah.
And that's Star Wars in a nutshell for me. Every time I get to go back, it's like that. Every time I think there's no way they could possibly make this cooler.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah.
And I feel very fortunate. And I'm going to say one more thing about Anthony Daniels is at the end of that shoot day, and it was a long day for him. I mean, it's tough being in that costume. You can't see anything. He got back into costume and said, if anybody on the crew would like to have their photograph taken with me in the suit, they can. The only thing I ask is you do not share it on social media.
Oh, okay.
And that's the thing. Like, he wanted this to be like a private, like a personal, and I've just outed him doing this. But this is how wonderfully generous this man is. He gets back into the suit and will endure having it on to make other people happy, and he wants no credit for it.
That's amazing.
Just wants that to be and I love that. Like, I have such a deep respect and affection for Anthony Daniels and his wife, who's just absolutely lovely as well. Both of them so kind, and just so knowledgeable. It's that's what it's like being on a Star Wars set.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's what it's like. It's crazy. It's wonderful.
Amazing. That's so cool. And for anybody who's read Anthony's book, where he talks about like what it can be like to be in that costume all day, to then have him volunteer to put it back on for fun. Yeah, I am C-3PO.
It's great.
It's
Great
such
book.
a good book. You read about those early days in A New Hope or Star Wars back then, and being out in Tunisia, his first day on set, and you think like, this is a man who's gone from like, taking that thing off and being like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know how to, like, he's like, no, I know what this means to people. I'm gonna put it back on. And I'm sure that the suit's a little bit better than it was in 76, but not much. C-3PO's look hasn't changed. You got to go with the classic, and he's gonna put it back on to make people stay. That's pretty amazing. Oh, Anthony Daniels. So one thing that's really fun, I think, about Carson Teva as a character is he's kind of the everyman in the Star Wars galaxy. He's
no force powers, no
force. Yeah, he's
a guy.
He's a pilot. He's involved in the New Republic and the Rebel Alliance. Yeah, he believes in what he's doing, and he has a good sense for the larger picture of the galaxy. But yeah, he's not a Jedi. He's not a Sith. He doesn't have that special power. And there's a great scene, I think, that embodies that in Ahsoka, where it's in the Anakin episode when Hera you're trying to tell Hera, like, we gotta go, we gotta get out of here, and she's like, no, my son has just sent something through the Force, and Hu Yang explains it to you, and Carson just goes, okay, like, let's go. And so you get to be what's when you're approaching this galaxy that we all know so much about, so much about, there's this larger power, the character knows there's this larger power, and he still has to be grounded by more or less the same reality that we live in. What's that like to play that sort of character?
It's really it's liberating in a way, because like you're kind of the audience in that sense, right? And so Well, everybody is off doing these things. It's not that you're along for the ride, but you're bearing witness to what's going on and trying to be actively as engaged as you can in situations that are kind of above your pay grade, right? Things that are just going on. It's really nice to be that character because I've got so many fans reaching out and saying, how much they enjoy my work and, they really can relate to me, which is wonderful. Right. And it is, I am the audience in that sense, and it's a lot of fun to play that part, to be the guy that's grounded, but realizes, okay, you got to sort of play along because even though you think this is kind of nuts, you do it. Like he goes along with Hera because he's unquestionably loyal to her and because he served with her and he's always done well by her and he knows who she is and that she's not out for the glory. She's not out for anything else. And so when she makes up her mind and needs to do something, then whether you understand why it needs to be done or not, you do it just because of who she is. And it's great because, Hera and Hu Yang kind of have that conversation, in the ghost cockpit, which is really cool. And so, it is great in that sense to just sort of bear witness to all that and to play that small part. I've been compared to the new Wedge Antilles, which is another really great comparison.
It's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, because he's there and he's loyal and he's a good pilot and he's got his head about him and stuff. And yeah, I'm loving the sort of the backstory that has been created for Carson Teva as he goes along because he served during Alderaan, right? He served with Harrison Dula.
Yeah,
he served with all these, and he's been around for all these
with R5D4.
Yeah, right. And like all those little touchstones throughout. It's a wonderful web that Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni have been weaving, and I feel very, very fortunate and insanely grateful to be included in that, and to be part of Star Wars canon.
Yeah,
it's a part that just blows me away. It's like my character is canon. Right? Like holy crap! And he's not just the guy that's just sort of like it's not all like that. All of my exploits, they're all on screen now, right? All these things. They're not expanded universe things where you hear about them. They're referred to on screen, which is really cool. And it just says, there are even more possibilities for other storylines if you're going to do a flashback, or if you're going to do that expanded universe stuff in the comics or the novels. There's that fertile ground to explore. It's like, well, where was Carson during this time?
Yeah.
How does he know Hera? All that stuff. It's just, it's wonderful.
They just announced Tales of the Empire. I think
yes,
they would do Tales of the Rebellion.
Right.
I feel like Carson's a character that would be rife for exploration there. But you compare Carson to Wedge, and I think that's a fun comparison. But he's right there in the middle of these storylines. He's he doesn't have the Force, but he's picking up on things that he knows something is wrong out there.
Yeah.
And he's trying to get people to listen to him. For you, again, as an actor, what's it like to be playing that character who's like, please, everybody, somebody understand things look okay right now, but there's something going on out there. We need to figure it out.
It's great because, it's like being the prophet Cassandra who can foresee the future, but is cursed because no one will ever believe her. Right. And it's fun playing that level of frustration. Especially in season 3 Mandalorian, where he's just trying to get, for example, Colonel Tuttle to do the right thing and to send help to Navarro, right? And and it gives an insight into why the New Republic is so flawed and why so many planets would turn against them.
Yeah,
and why it would be possible for the First Order to rise in the midst of all this stuff. It's because they're trapped in the bureaucracy and trying to rule with in an egalitarian way, which is almost impossible for something that big. So it is fun playing that character because the audience is intrinsically on your side, because the audience knows what happens in the sequels, right? They know Carson's right, they know what's coming, and so that dramatic irony, that tension, that frustration all the fans have, just puts them in, in my corner even more so, because everybody's screaming, "He's right! Listen to him!" Right?
Yeah, he's not only he's right, but also there's Katie O'Brien as Elia Kane and some of those things, actively undermining you as well.
Yeah.
You're like, no, come on,
Yeah.
listen to him.
Yeah.
Please. Yeah. So I want to ask you about something else that relates to Mando season 3 and Ahsoka. I don't think this is something I think you experienced like the rest of us, which is that Carson Teva, very important character in the story now, so important that they gave him character posters for Mando season 3 and and for Ahsoka. And I'm just gonna throw them both up on the screen here. And you got Carson in his X-wing jumpsuit. He's putting on his gloves, ready for action. And people noticed right away it's the exact same picture of you for both of these posters. Is this just like a don't mess with perfection kind of thing? Like, we got it right once, let's go with it again?
No, I have no idea. I don't care. Like, they could use this. I'm just so happy to have that they thought enough of the character and to put him up there, that he rates having a poster. And this is, for me, I mean, that's like the cherry on top of everything else, right? Like, if only Hasbro could step up and release an action figure of me, then it would be complete. But I mean, I look at that with an incredible sense of humility and a sense of satisfaction. It's sort of like, I did it. Like, my character rates this now. And so I'm happy. And it was funny too, hearing the outrage from the fans saying you couldn't spring for another pose, a different photo, right? And it was just like, I'm fine with it. It's a good picture. If it was a bad picture, I'd be a little bit more like, oh man, really? Right?
If they've thrown your driver's license picture up there and just slapped
exactly
Ahsoka on it, you might have a difference.
I mean, you might have seen this meme. There's a guy, he plays for the Texas Rangers. And he's going through his MLB The Show pictures, and he's like, oh, he's going through his teammates. He goes, that looks really cool. Like, the guy's he's a dynamic. He's pitching in this and that. I can't remember what character. I think it was Gallo. And he's going through, and then they have a picture of him, and he looks like he's being violated. He's like, he's got this horrible pained look on his face, and like the picture that they have for his character is just like, he looks like a criminal. He's like, who's picking these pictures? Everybody else looks cool, and he looks like the worst. And so, hey, that photograph that they used for me in those posters, I'll take. I'll take every day and twice on Sundays.
He's cool. He's ready for action. He's getting the gloves on. You can tell he's about ready to jump in. Do you do like a separate photo shoot for that sort of thing? Do you go in for another day and they say, all right, look like you're ready to go, sort of thing?
They'll usually do it on the day of shooting. When you're your first day of shooting, you'll go in and, while they're setting up shots, and say, okay, we're going to take you. They'll do, they do a full body scan of you. So Gentle Giant, they have this big rig set up where you step in. There's 150 cameras all around you, and they get you to do different poses, and you do that. And then you go off to the unit photographer, and they'll have a backdrop and different props, and they'll have you go through a number of different poses, like with your helmet, without your helmet. If you have a weapon or not, like doing the heroic one leg up on a box type thing, on your haunches, squatting down, like you're at a campfire type thing, all these different poses. And so they have a whole bunch more. I guess that was the best of all of them. So that's fine.
Don't mess with perfection, right?
Yeah,
you
that was a good one.
Got it once. You got it once. let's roll with it again.
Exactly.
Well, if for whatever the next show that Carson shows up, and if we see another character poster with the gloves on, then I think they're embracing it. I think they're embracing the well, Paul, I want to thank you for giving us an hour here this morning. It's been just such a pleasure chatting with you about Star Wars and everything. It's such a it's always such an amazing time to meet you and to get to talk to you. Let me just ask you, obviously always in motion is the future. I'm not going to ask you about anything specific. I'll just ask you, what are you excited about with Star Wars as a fan, as Paul the fan? What are you excited about coming up down the line?
I'm really looking forward to those episodes of The Acolyte finally dropping. I'm really looking forward to Skeleton Crew as well. Tales of the Empire. We are rushing headlong towards the ending of the Bad Batch. There's only I think there's 5 episodes left.
Yeah, we're
that.
closing in. Yeah,
and I don't have a
It's
good
so
feeling
good.
about this. It's a great series, but there's a certain amount of dread that I have. I can't quite place why, but it's there.
Dr. Hemlock is so unsettling as a
Right?
character that you
Yeah.
you never know what he's gonna do, and he's got Omega. I don't know.
One, we don't see any of them later on. Like,
Yeah.
where's Omega? I don't see her in any, So that's the other thing too. It's like, it's like Rogue One. You watch Rogue One, you go, I know how this is gonna end for all of them because it must, right? Yeah. And so that's the thing. Like, you see glimpses of Rex and Wolf later on down the line, right? But you don't see any of Clone Force 99. So whether that's by design or not, I mean, there's still, like you say,
there's hope.
You never know. Yeah. So those, and of course, Mandalorian, the Mandalorian movie, like making the jump to the big screen, which is, if you can watch, I think the show should be viewed on a big screen. I remember season 3 going to the premiere, and we were at the El Capitan Theater, and watching those episodes on a movie screen just felt so right. So it'll be great that, Mando and Grogu will be on the big screen. Ahsoka season 2 is in development. And then, all things Star Wars. I'm excited about all of it. So, yeah.
Looking at well, and I hope that in at least a couple of those projects you've mentioned that Carson Teva will find his way back to our screens in one way or another. Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Your lips to God's ears.
Yeah, exactly. So, Paul, if people want to keep up with you online, you're very active on social media. You're always at the conventions. I hear nothing but good things about people meeting you at conventions. I've witnessed this. If people want to keep up with you, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Angry Appa. That's the one where I seem whatever I have the most traction on that platform for whatever reason. You can also follow my YouTube channel at Bitter Asian Dude Inc. on YouTube, where I do a show called Funboxing Sundays, usually on Sundays. It's been I've had to let that, I've been super busy, so I haven't been able to do the show in the last little bit, but I've got a number of unboxing videos on there where I open up a geeky collectible, do a half-ass review, and basically just sort of chat. So there's that. And I'm not as active on Twitter or X anymore, but you can give me a follow there every once in a while. I'll jump back up on there and respond to as many people's tweets with as many gifs as I can of Uppa, which is always brings people a laugh. So on Twitter and on Threads, it's at Bitter Asian Dude.
Bitter Asian Dude.
Yeah, you can find me on there. And I have a fan page on Facebook, Paul Sun-Hyung Lee. So
there you go.
Check that out.
And I'll ask one more question just to leave us on, because you mentioned Appa. It's in your handle on Instagram. You use the Appa gifts all the time. Kim's Convenience was such a beloved show for so many people, beloved by Canadians, people in Toronto, the Asian community, people all over the world have really loved that show. And it ended in kind of a odd way. We'll put it that way. We'll leave it that way. It ended in an odd way. But for you to have gone from that show, which was so beautiful and important to so many people, to then get your dream jobs after it, sort of thing, being in Avatar, being in Star Wars, what has that journey been like for you as an actor, as a person who's experienced sort of the ups and downs, the highs and lows of a career as an actor?
Yeah, it's been a tremendous experience. I mean, Kim's Convenience is a show that I love doing. I love playing Appa. That was a show that really was my first huge break in terms of being the lead on a television series that was critically acclaimed, that is well loved, still loved. I mean, people still to this day come up to me and they lament how the show ended and that how they want more, but how much they loved it, in the end. And from Kim's was where everything else sprung from. Like, I don't get Star Wars without Kim's Convenience, and I don't get Avatar without Star Wars and Kim's Convenience, right? And so it's that journey which has been incredible, and it keeps me sort of very grounded and humble in a way, because this level of success that I'm enjoying right now in my career, I think had I experienced this earlier on, I don't think I would have appreciated it as much, because I know how difficult it is to make a living in this industry, and how hard it is to get work, and how hard it is to be on a show that lasts any amount of time. And now to be a part of 3 big things
Yeah.
has been really, really quite humbling. And I'm quite grateful for it too. And so that's one of the things that where you hope when you start off your career that you're going to be working consistently, and I have been. And so I'm being very fortunate that way, but I've also had to work very, very hard to get to this point. You know, Kim's doesn't happen if I'm not working my ass off on every other gig leading up to Kim's, you know, and Star Wars doesn't happen if I'm not working my ass off on Kim's. And, you know, and so it goes. And that's the thing. There's no real time to sort of take your foot off the gas and coast. Not in this business. In this business, you really do have to be excellent at all times. And that's a point of professional pride and work ethic and your reputation. But it also, like, if you want to guarantee more work, then you kind of have to be excellent at it, right? And that's great, because that's what I would expect of anybody else. The moment you think you've got it made is the moment you stop working. So that's the thing. Always stay cognizant of, you know, you're only as good as your last thing. So keep going.
Amazing. Great. And that's great advice for everybody, whether you're in the entertainment industry or doing whatever you're passionate about. That's amazing. All right. Thank you again, Paul. Bitter Asian Dude Inc. on YouTube, Bitter Asian Dude on Threads and Twitter. We'll call it Twitter, and Angry Appa on Instagram. Thank you again. We look forward to seeing you around at the conventions, and we'll look forward to seeing Carson Teva back in the galaxy far, far away very, very soon. May the force be with you. And again, huge thanks to Paul for sitting down with me. Be sure to follow him on social media at Angry Appa on Instagram, at Bitter Asian Dude on Twitter/X, and check out Bitter Asian Dude Inc. on YouTube. The Star Wars Underworld podcast will be back this week with another episode. We'll be breaking down the penultimate episode of The Bad Batch and discussing this week's Star Wars news. As always, that will be recorded live on Thursday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, that's 6 Pacific, on YouTube, and it will be available on Friday morning on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you get your shows. We hope you join us then. Be sure to subscribe to never miss an episode. In between shows, you can join the Star Wars Underworld Network Discord to keep the conversation going, and check out the other great shows on the Star Wars Underworld Network, including The Rayside, Ion Cannon, Tales from Beyond the Galaxy, The Tractor Beam, and more. That's it for me. Thanks for watching and listening. We'll see you next time, and may the Force be with you.
It's a wrap.